I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. Laura and I had been married for 7 years, and for the most part I thought we were solid. Sure, there were little fights here and there, typical stuff, money, sex, her bitchy attitude sometimes, but nothing that felt like it threatened the foundation of what we had. We'd gone through some rough patches, but I always believed we were in it for the long haul. That's what made this hit so hard. It started subtly. Little things. She'd be more distant, cancel plans last minute, or get defensive when I asked her where she'd been or who she'd been talking to. I chalked it up to work stress or her usual mood swings, but then I noticed her phone was more guarded. She kept it on silent, and her screen was mostly face down if I came near. I'd catch her glancing at it nervously as if she was hiding something. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I knew deep down something was off. Still, I told myself to wait and see. One day I decided to surprise her and stop by her office after work. I wanted to bring her a coffee, maybe catch her before she left. When I got there, I found her in a room I'd never seen before, small, private, with a sign that said meditation room. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I saw her through the glass, sitting with a man I didn't recognize. They looked cozy, leaning close, whispering, and she was touching his arm. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I froze outside the door, watching, trying to process what I was seeing. The guy was older, maybe in his late 50s or early 60s, with a calm, serene look, probably the so-called spiritual advisor she'd been talking about. She told me she was doing some meditation retreat weekend, but I'd had a gut feeling it was more. I'd even asked her outright if she was cheating. She rolled her eyes and called me paranoid. Now I was watching her with this man, her hand resting on his leg, her head tilted as if they were sharing some secret. What's worse is, the staff at the retreat had seen it too. I found out later that several people there had noticed her. And this advisor sneaking out of the meditation room late at night. Staff members had even witnessed them in some inappropriate way, something I probably shouldn't describe, but suffice it to say, it wasn't just innocent energy work. It was something else. I was stunned. How could she betray me like this? After all the trust, the vows, the years. I felt a boiling mixture of betrayal, rage, and heartbreak all at once. I waited until she left that night, her car disappearing down the driveway, and I snuck inside. I needed to see what was really going on. I found her phone where she always left it, on the kitchen counter. I checked her messages, her emails, everything. And there it was, texts, photos, even voice memos. She'd been lying to my face, pretending she was doing some energy alignment session, while she was actually in bed with that man. I saw the photos of her in some compromising positions, her face clear as day, her hair messed up, her lips parted. She'd been cheating on me right under my nose. I was furious, more than I'd ever been in my life. How dare she sit there and lie about her spiritual growth when she was screwing around with some old guy? It was like a slap in the face. I started to shake, my fists clenched. I didn't even know what to do with all these feelings, hurt, betrayal, anger. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I had to be strategic. I needed to hear her explanation, but honestly, I doubted she'd give me one that made any sense. I just couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so stupid for so long. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. How long had she been cheating? Was it just that one time, or had it been going on for months? Did she love that guy? Did she care about what she was doing to us? I felt like my world was collapsing. I had no idea how I was going to face her the next day, knowing she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I kept telling myself I wouldn't lose it, but inside I was falling apart. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd found last night. I couldn't look at Laura the same way. Just thinking about her, her bitchy attitude, her lies, her cheating, made me want to scream or cry or both at once. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. This wasn't just some petty fight. It was a full-blown betrayal that rewired everything I thought I knew about us. I took a shower, tried to clear my head, but the images kept coming back. I remembered how she'd lied to me about the retreat, how she insisted she was finding herself or working on her energy. She'd always been into New Age stuff, but I never thought she'd cross this line. It was one thing to believe in meditation or energy work. It was another to cheat with a spiritual advisor during what was supposed to be a couple's retreat. The thought made me sick. When she finally woke up, I played it cool at first. She was her usual bitchy self, snapping at me when I asked if she wanted coffee. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was boiling. I knew I couldn't approach her like I normally did. Not anymore. I had to be careful. I decided I'd let her talk first, see what kind of lies she'd tell, and then I'd hit her with everything I knew. She started babbling about her therapy session, how it was purely professional, and how I was just overreacting. She said she needed space and that I was jealous, insecure, paranoid. When I showed her the evidence on my phone, her messages, the photos, her face turned white. She looked at me with a mixture of shock and disdain, then quickly brushed it off, claiming it was all misunderstood. Nothing serious, just energy work that got out of hand. She said she'd been exploring herself, whatever that means, and that I was just jealous because I couldn't accept her growth. I felt my blood boil. All I could think about was how she'd lied to me for months, how she'd sneaked around behind my back, pretending to be spiritual when she was just screwing some old guy and probably more. I asked her outright, "Were you sleeping with him? Were you cheating on me this whole time?" And she snapped at me, her voice full of venom. "You're crazy, Luke. I do have to explain myself to you. You're just insecure. I don't owe you anything." That's when I lost it. I told her to get out of my house. I was done, completely done. She looked at me like I'd just slapped her, her bitchy face twisted in rage. She started lying again, saying I was paranoid, that I was losing it, that I was making a scene for no reason. But I wasn't going to let her spin her web of bullshit. I told her I knew everything, that she'd been with that spiritual advisor, that I'd seen the photos, read the texts. She scoffed, acting like I was some jealous fool who didn't understand her growth journey. That moment, I realized I was staring into the eyes of someone I barely recognized. She'd become this cold, manipulative woman who would lie and cheat without remorse. It hurt so much, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I needed to decide what was best for me, to stay and keep pretending everything was fine, or to walk away from this nightmare. The truth was, I felt broken, like I'd lost a part of myself, and I wasn't sure how to get it back. As she left that morning, her bitchy smirk still on her face, I knew my life was about to change forever. I sat down on the couch, staring at the empty doorway, wondering how I ended up here. How the woman I loved could do something so disgusting, so betray me in the most personal way possible. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was undeniable. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't even recognize anymore. And I had no idea how I was supposed to fix this, or if I even should. All I knew was that my world had turned upside down, and I had to figure out what came next. The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and a strange numbness. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat much. Everything about my life felt shattered. I kept replaying that moment when I saw her in the meditation room, her hand on that guy's leg, her face so at ease while I was clueless. How long had she been doing this? Had she ever really loved me? Or was I just some placeholder she'd been pretending to tolerate? The questions gnawed at me, but I knew dwelling on them wouldn't change anything. I had to act. I decided to start gathering more evidence just in case I needed it. I went through her emails and social media, looking for anything I might have missed. It wasn't long before I found more disturbing messages, flirty texts, suggestive photos, even plans to meet up again. She'd been lying to me for months, hiding her affair under the guise of spiritual growth. I was seething, wondering how I'd been so blind, so naive. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I sat her down, told her I knew everything, and demanded she tell me the truth. She looked at me with that bitchy sneer she always had, trying to spin her lies. "Luke, you have no idea what's really going on. You're just insecure. I'm exploring myself, okay? This isn't about you, it's about me finding peace. You're just jealous because you're afraid of losing me." Her words were full of contempt, like I was some obstruction to her enlightenment. I lost my temper. I told her she was full of Shit that her so-called energy work was just her way of hiding her infidelity. I said I deserved honesty, not some bullshit excuse about growth. When she started crying and claiming she didn't mean to hurt me, I laughed bitterly. Hurt? She didn't care about hurting me. She'd already done that and worse. This was just her way of saving face. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I told her she needed to leave immediately. She refused, getting even more aggressive, accusing me of being controlling and insecure. We argued for hours, and I saw her true colors: bitchy, manipulative, and utterly selfish. That night I packed some of my stuff, not knowing if she'd come back or if I should even want her to. I didn't want to be with someone who so easily threw away our marriage for some bullshit spiritual fling. The thing is, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation. Part of me was glad I found out that I was finally free from her lies. But another part was devastated, crushed by the reality that the woman I loved had betrayed me so completely. I never thought she'd do something like this, especially not during what should have been a sacred retreat. It's like she used that whole experience as a cover, as if her growth was just a mask for her cheating. I kept asking myself, how did I miss this? How did I not see it coming? I started to reach out to friends, family, anyone I trusted just to get some perspective. Everyone was angry for me, telling me I didn't deserve that kind of betrayal. But inside, I felt lost. I wondered if I'd done something wrong, if I'd somehow driven her away. I kept replaying all the signs, trying to find a reason that made sense. But deep down, I knew some part of her had always been selfish, manipulative, and willing to lie to keep her secrets. That night I sat alone in the quiet of my apartment, staring at the empty walls. It hit me hard. I'd been living a lie. I'd believed in us, in the vows we took, but now I saw her for who she really was. I realized I had to make a choice: fight to save what's left or walk away and start over. I didn't know if I could forgive her, or if I even wanted to try. All I knew was I couldn't stay blind anymore. The betrayal was too deep, and I had to decide whether I was worth more than this deception. I felt a heavy weight on my chest, and for the first time in years I allowed myself to truly feel the pain. After I kicked her out, everything changed. My apartment felt like a prison and a sanctuary all at once. I spent the next few days in a daze, bouncing between anger, sadness, and a kind of numb disbelief. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs for so long. How could I have been so blind to the woman I loved, who claimed she was seeking spiritual awakening, while secretly betraying me with that damn advisor? It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. I decided I had to get some clarity. I started talking to a few close friends, guys I trust, people who'd been married longer than me and had been through their own hell. The advice was brutal but necessary. Cut all contact with her, focus on myself, and don't fall into the trap of thinking I could fix her or somehow make sense of this mess. It was clear she was manipulative, bitchy, and not going to change. That realization was a punch, but also a relief. I couldn't keep pretending I still had the wife I thought I'd married. One thing I did that night was go through all the messages, emails, and photos again. I needed to know exactly what she'd done and how deep it went. I found some more startling things: more photos, more texts, and some audio recordings where she was talking about her sessions with the advisor, describing how amazing it felt to be so close to him, to feel the energy shift. Hearing her say that, I felt sick. She lied about everything. That energy work was just an excuse to hide her infidelity. I realized she'd been cheating on me right under my nose during our supposed marriage counseling, pretending she was working on herself while she was screwing around. Now, I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I had something to hold onto: irrefutable proof. I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her spin her lies anymore. I was done being the fool. I was ready to call her out, tell her exactly how much she'd hurt me and how deeply her betrayal cut. But I also knew I had to prepare myself emotionally. I couldn't just blow up and lose it. I needed to handle this with some level of control, however much pain I was in. When she finally tried to call me a few days later, I answered. Her voice was bitchy, trying to act innocent and dismissive, like I was overreacting, like she was the victim. But I cut her off fast. I told her I knew everything. I laid out the proof I'd collected and told her I was done with her lies. I told her she was a manipulative, selfish bitch who had betrayed everything we once stood for. Her silence on the other end was deafening. That was the moment I realized how far gone she was, how little remorse she had. She tried to deny everything, of course, but I didn't listen. I told her she could keep lying, but I was done. Now I'm left with so many questions. Do I try to salvage what's left of our marriage? Do I demand she get therapy or cut her out completely? Honestly, I don't know if I can ever trust her again, but part of me wants to believe people can change. The other part knows I deserve better than someone who cheats during what's supposed to be a spiritual retreat and then lies to my face about it. I've been through denial, anger, and now, a strange kind of acceptance. It's a lot to handle. I keep thinking about what I want for myself moving forward. I know I need space, time, and probably some professional help to process all this. The betrayal has left a scar that's deep, and I don't think I'll ever completely forget. But what I do know is I'm not going to let her define my happiness. I have to rebuild, to find out who I am without her, and maybe someday find someone who actually respects me. Having her walk out of my life was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it also felt like a step toward reclaiming what little sense of self I have left. Honestly, I don't have all the answers yet, but I do know one thing. I'll never let someone betray me like that again. And if you're reading this and going through something similar, just remember, trust your instincts, gather your evidence if you need to, and don't be afraid to walk away. Some people are just too broken or selfish to fix. You deserve better. After I made it clear I was done with her, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. It was like finally ripping off a bandage that had been slowly choking me. But underneath, I was still hurting badly. Every memory, every moment I had with her, suddenly felt tainted, like everything we'd built was just a lie. The betrayal cut so deep I wasn't sure if I could ever really heal from it. Still, I knew I had to start moving forward, even if it meant taking small, painful steps. I reached out to a therapist, someone who specializes in betrayal and emotional trauma. Sitting in that first session, spilling everything felt like a huge weight was lifting off my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was starting to breathe again. Talking about it helped me understand that her behavior wasn't a reflection of me, but rather a reflection of her own issues, her insecurities, her need for validation, her manipulative streak. I kept reminding myself that I was worth respect and honesty, and that I shouldn't have to settle for anything less. I also started focusing on myself. I hit the gym more regularly, trying to channel my anger into something productive. I threw myself into work, spending long hours to drown out the pain. I even started reconnecting with old friends, people I'd neglected while I was caught up in our marriage. Slowly, I was building a new version of myself, one that wasn't defined by her lies and betrayal. But the hardest part was the aftermath of the betrayal in my mind. I kept asking myself, did I miss the signs? Could I have done something differently? Was I just too blind to see how manipulative she was? I kept replaying all the moments I ignored the red flags, every time I brushed off my gut feelings. I realized I'd done my best, but some people are just fundamentally dishonest, and no matter how much love you give, they'll find a way to hurt you. One day, I decided to confront her again, this time to get some closure. I texted her, asked if she wanted to meet and talk honestly. She refused, of course, playing the victim, saying I was overreacting, that I was trying to control her. That made me angry. I knew better now. I knew she was just trying to manipulate the situation, keep me hooked on her lies. I told her I didn't want her to contact me anymore, that I needed space to heal and rebuild my life without her. That decision was freeing, even if it hurt like hell. I realized I'd been giving her power by holding on to hope, by waiting for her to change. Now, I was finally accepting that she was gone, completely gone, and I had to move on. It was time to face the fact that I deserved someone who would love and respect me, not betray me during a supposed spiritual retreat. Looking back, I see this experience as one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, but also one of the most important. It taught me to listen to my instincts, to trust myself, and to never ignore the red flags. Sometimes people hide who they really are behind a mask of spirituality or charm, but the truth always comes out in the end. I've learned that I don't need someone like her, someone who manipulates, cheats, and lies to be happy. I'm taking this as a wake-up call, a chance to rebuild and realize my worth. And honestly, I believe I'll come out of this stronger than I ever was before. I just have to keep moving forward, no matter how much it hurts now. It's been weeks since I kicked her out and started this new chapter, and honestly, I'm still trying to piece everything together. Some days are easier than others, but the core truth remains. I was betrayed by someone I loved and trusted deeply. That sting doesn't go away overnight. But I've learned a lot about myself through this mess, about boundaries, about listening to my instincts, and most importantly, about my own worth. One thing I've realized is that I need to stop blaming myself for her choices. It's tempting to wonder if I could have done something differently, but the reality is she made her decisions, decisions rooted in her own insecurities and selfishness. I was just the guy she deceived while she searched for some false sense of enlightenment. That's on her, not me. What gives me some peace now is knowing I wasn't weak or naive. I gave her everything, my time, my trust, my love, and she threw it all away. But I also understand that I can't control her actions or her choices. The only thing I can control is how I respond and how I move forward. I've decided to focus on rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and to make sure I never let someone manipulate or betray me like that again. This whole experience has been a brutal wake-up call. It's shown me that sometimes people wear masks of spirituality or kindness, but underneath, they're just as flawed and selfish as anyone else. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever, especially if they're toxic or dishonest. I've come to accept that walking away was the best decision I could make for my peace and sanity. Moving forward, I plan to take better care of myself, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I'll rebuild trust in myself first. I'll remember the lessons I've learned, especially about listening to my gut, and I won't let guilt or anger consume me. Instead, I'll channel that pain into growth, into becoming stronger and more resilient. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone reading this who's going through something similar, it's this: trust yourself. Your instincts are there for a reason. Don't ignore red flags, and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't respect you. Betrayal hurts like hell, but it also teaches you your true value. And someday, you'll look back and realize that surviving this was what made you stronger. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll be okay. I'll find happiness again, without her, without the lies. I'll rebuild my life piece by piece and remember that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance for a new beginning.